Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another episode. First thing as always, I hope everyone's well and thank you very much for returning. Usually I hate international breaks, especially this stage of the season. And I think I speak for all Newcastle United fans. We welcome this one because we're sick of watching and whinging about the dross we're seeing on the football pitch because it hasn't been good reading this season for Newcastle United, especially away from home. We've had nothing to shout about. It's been our longest run without a win since 2021. The final 3 games of that season was managed by Eddie Howe. Let's be brutally honest, us Newcastle United fans are sitting there scratching our head thinking, why is Dan Burn broken? Why is Eddie Howe not doing anything to change this? And why can't we buy a shot on target, never mind a win? But do you know what? I'm sick of whinging and I'm going to try and embrace some optimism moving forwards and why the season can improve and still get better and we can still change this round into a good season. Now, there's plenty of factors why we're disappointing at the moment. And all those little factors have compounded into one to create this mess. You can look at injuries, you can look at suspensions, you can look at the summer transfer window. Even though we don't even like the bloke, you can look at the missing piece of Alexander Isak, or you can actually turn Eddie Howe because Eddie Howe needs to look at himself in the mirror. Now, before we talk about Eddie Howe, let's just talk about why I made that video about Yoane Wissa yesterday. Now, I'm not sitting here saying Yoane Wissa is going to be the answer to all of our problems because there are many little problems that are creating this big situation. I'm not saying Yoane Wissa is going to be the best player in the world, and I'm not saying Yoane Wissa is going to change our fortunes and hit the ground running. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm going to be brutally honest. I spent the summer speaking about Yoane Wissa and saying he wouldn't be my first choice striker. And we absolutely overpaid for Yoane Wissa. But what we're going to do, sit here and whinge about it. We can't change the circumstances. Yoane Wissa's here now, so we may as well embrace it and see what he might potentially bring to the team. And that's all I was doing. I was trying to spread some positivity on why this season can improve. If we just be negative, honestly, I'm just going to cry. But Eddie Howe needs to take a look at himself in the mirror because his decisions and in-game management have been appalling this season. Coming up in this video, we're going to look at some of the problems we've faced this season, but also why 2 little diamonds could potentially change our fortunes. But let me just clarify one thing. I'm not Eddie Howe out yet, and I say yet because I can see problems. But I think he's deserved a chance to turn this around once he gets his injuries back because the importance of Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, I didn't realise how important they are to our build-up, both defensively and offensively. So I think he deserves the opportunity to try and change it around once they're back from injury. Now, if the problems continue, that's when I'll speak up and say, maybe he has taken us as far as he can take us. Think about it this way. I haven't turned that 360-degree angle yet. If you're full 360, you want Eddie Howe out. I'm at the point where I'm about 70. Now, if this continues and he continues to make bad judgment calls and not show anything in-game in terms of management, and I've said this before, one of Eddie Howe's biggest flaws is his in-game management. He's got that plan where we're pressed, we're intense. And thirdly, the lack of accountability blows my mind. He keeps on saying that we're losing games because of mentality reasons and physical reasons, which I kind of agree. But he also keeps on saying that it's not technical or tactical issues, which I do disagree with. And we're going to break down exactly why, because the same thing keeps on happening time and time again, and we're getting punished for it. So I'm not sitting here saying Eddie Howe is the answer to all our problems, but I'm sitting here saying I think he deserves a little bit of a time to try and turn this around. That's just my opinion, but I appreciate all your opinions. Now, this is what he said after the West Ham defeat. Easy to say what wasn't there today. The energy, the physicality was missing in our performance. It didn't look like a Newcastle team we've seen in recent seasons. I don't think that was necessarily tactical or technical. It was a byproduct of us not being where we needed to be mentally. Now, I'll say it again. I kind of agree. It was mental factors, but I believe, in my opinion, the tactical and technical factors are impacting us mentally. Now, I believe one of our biggest main problems this season is our defensive shape. Newcastle United are unique when it comes to defending, especially in a mid-block, which is exactly what we're doing this season. Most teams in a mid-block defend in a 4-4-2. This season, Newcastle United have been defending in a 4-5-1 and with a deeper backline than in recent seasons. Now, you can factor in reasons why. You can look at Tino Livramento's injuries, Lewis Hall's injuries, so he's protecting our backline. He wants our midfield to screen our backline, but it's causing us more problems than it is solutions. We'll get on to our defensive shape very shortly, but firstly, I want to look at some statistics last season that prove that we are decent away from home, because last season we generated the second most shots in the league from fast breaks. Now, last season, we were ferocious when we broke forward with speed, intensity, aggression, directness, and the opposition just literally couldn't cope with it. Now, as you can see from the graphic on the screen now, our pass completion rate and directness of passes is plummeted from last season to this season. Now, if we move it on even further, Newcastle United were actually one of the best teams at creating good opportunities last season. Now, across last season, we had the least shots taken from outside the penalty area. You might look at that and think it's a bad thing, but we had the 5th highest XG across the full season, which shows that we were so good at working the ball into better areas. Now, what Newcastle United were so good at last season and what impacted us going forward was our wing play. We were so good at attacking the space between the left back and the centre back. We were actually one of the best teams last season at creating seams between the defensive lines. That was by creating overloads out wide and attacking the space between the fullback and the centre backs. Now, as obvious as it sounds, without dynamic fullbacks, we can't be doing that anymore. So there's no doubt the influence of Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento make us better. But our defensive shape has actually gotten deeper and deeper and deeper as the seasons go on, which is impacting us offensively. And I've spoke about this in recent videos. Sometimes it's not about your offensive ability. It's not about what you do in possession. It's what you do out of possession. I'm going to show you exactly why our defensive shape is impacting us going forwards. As you can see on the screen there, when you compare our home games this season to our away games, everything's reduced. Possession won in the final third is lower, high turnovers is lower, high pressures applied is lower, high pressures in the final third is also lower. And ultimately, that's affecting our ability to create chances, which is exactly why our expected goals is less than half away from home than it is at home. So those statistics are telling you two things. At home, we are more aggressive, intense, and we do press off the ball. Away from home, we went into a more zonal marking. I want to take you to this graphic because this graphic is our average line across the last 4 seasons under Eddie Howe. And as you can see, it's gradually got deeper and deeper and deeper. From 2022-23 season to this season, there's almost 9 meters difference. Ultimately, this impacts you in possession and out of possession, because what this does is, in possession, because you're sitting 9 meters deeper, it means you've got an extra 9 meters to progress the ball. Now, Newcastle United thrive in transition moments, so it's ultimately making our fast breaks and transition moments less effective because it gives the opposition more time to set in their defensive shape. Now, defensively, it also impacts you defensively because it changes the way you defend. Now, defensively, Newcastle United set up in a 4-5-1 shape this season. Now, they do that at home and away, so the principles are exactly the same, but what's changed is the behaviours. At home, we're a lot more active. Therefore, when we do overturn the ball, we've got players in advanced areas to thrive in transition. Whereas away from home, we're a lot more zonal and we're defending a lot more passively. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you could be doing that. We don't have Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall's recovery pace, so we are sitting further deeper in marking zones rather than man-to-man. Now, the reason why this is impacting us is because it's creating gaps in our system. And when you defend in a 5 mid block and leave so much space as we do between the lines, the opposition are finding it so easy to pack your midfield out the game. Now, this is exactly why I'm saying Eddie Howe, he's wrong when he says it's not tactical and technical. Let's take it game by game throughout this season away from home. If you go to Aston Villa, you can clearly see what they're trying to do. They're putting players in the corridor of uncertainty between the lines, which if they find that player in that half space, it's completely eliminating our midfield out of the game. This is why our midfield looks so passive. Essentially, what he's looking to do is overload the midfield to protect the backline. But what that's doing is, if you're coming up against teams that are extremely clever, and in the Premier League, they're extremely clever, when you've got players like Dan Burn at left back who's broken positionally, mentally, physically, everything, then they find it so easy to play through the lines. As you can see, the teams coming up against us have obviously done their homework because they're putting 2 players between the lines. Now, we haven't mastered the art of zonal marking yet, and we're leaving gaps. And you can clearly see the gap between our midfield and our defensive line is too big. So when the opposition are playing through the lines, it's completely eliminating our midfield out the game. Okay, we didn't get punished against Aston Villa, but there was warning sign 1. If we move it on to our next game, Brighton, as you can see, Jorginho Ruta gets in that half space between the lines, that pocket of space where it's in the corridor of uncertainty, where the midfield don't want to defend it, and the defenders don't want to step out their defensive line because it creates an enormous gap for the opposition to play through. This is where we did get punished. Jorginho Ruta received it on the half turn and then just thread a ball through into Danny Welbeck. Now, if the opposition are successful at this, they create a 5 against 4. So they've got the overload. They've got the advantage in this situation. The same thing happened against Bournemouth. Again, we didn't get punished here, but the signs were there that they were breaking in so easily through the lines. The opposition were penetrating through our lines so comfortably. If we move it on to the West Ham game, this was happening time and time again. If we move it on to this situation where Somerville comes into the pocket of space, again, Emil Kraft doesn't track his runner, and he gets in behind Jacob Murphy and Bruno Guimaraes. That was another sign of them just breaking through the line so comfortably. And then again, if we move it on, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, so comfortable just breaking through the lines. Anthony Gordon getting caught sleeping. This is why Dan Burn has got to come inside. So there are so many problems and so easy for the opposition to break through us. Even if we move it on to this still image, we're allowing elite midfielders just to find passes. And when you've got players like Dan Burn, who isn't naturally a left back, getting caught out of position, this was happening time and time again. This is where their goal came from. And this is why I don't think it's just mentally, because I think our tactics and systems that we're deploying away from home is impacting us mentally, because we're starting to think, yeah, we're not doing great yet. And then ultimately that just affects your performance. So I want us to go back to start being braver out of possession, start being aggressive, playing with intensity, playing with that Newcastle United style that got us to this place. So not only are we so easy to play through, it's also affecting us offensively, because our wingers are so deep that when Nick Valdemara gets a ball, he's got nobody to aim, but also Nick Valdemara is not a drifter, so we don't have that fluid rotation in the final third. So when we do eventually get to that final third, we've got nobody running in behind, we've got nobody making fluid rotations because everybody is so distant. And Newcastle United last season were one of the best at creating wide overloads. Alexander Isak was a drifter, so Anthony Gordon could come inside, Alexander Isak would go into the left half space, and they would rotate their position. This instantly causes confusion to the opposition's backline. Now, what Newcastle United were brilliant at is breaking the seam. When the opposition is in their defensive shape, we relied heavily on wide overloads. Tino, Livramento and Lewis Hall, because of their dynamism, we were so good at getting around the outside of the opposition. They're looking for cutbacks or crosses into the penalty area. So in that sense, we were providing our forwards more service. So the inclusion of Tino, Livramento and Lewis Hall have to provide us fans some optimism. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about what they provide for us, because it's defensive stability, balance and attacking width. To the naked eye at the minute, Newcastle's ability to even compete in games relies heavily on dynamic fullback. Now, I'm not going to read all that out to you because there's a lot on the screen there, but you can read it if you want. It's just speaking about what Tino Livramento brings. Ultra fit, capable of motoring up and down the touchline, that relentless energy, but the ability to progress the ball forwards. Same with Lewis Hall, and I think that's what we're missing. When we're sitting 9 meters deeper than we do in previous seasons, and we don't have the players to progress the ball forwards, it's impacting us and we look a shadow of ourselves. Now, I do think it's quite unfortunate that Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento are injured at the same time, because even if you go back to last season or the season before when Lewis Hall was injured, Tino Livramento's ability to play at left back offered at least one-sided dynamism. He offered a lot more mobility, agility, technical ability, and ability to recover his position. When it comes to Dan Burn, I've seen Milk turn quicker than Dan Burn. Now, if we quickly have a look at the influence of Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall last season, it is unbelievable. When it comes to ball recoveries, Tino Livramento finished top, Lewis Hall finished 6th. So that ability to recover possession, we're massively missing, and it's influencing our defensive shape. Now, when we talk about in possession, progressive carries, the ability to progress forwards, move our full team up the pitch. Tino Livramento sit 4th for progressive carries. Lewis Hall sits 7th. Now, they also provided a lot in the final third when it comes to shot creating actions. Lewis Hall created 63 shots last season, whereas Tino Livramento created 45. Even that ability to put crosses into the box, into the danger area, Lewis Hall, despite only starting 25 league games last season, provided 110 crosses, which was 3rd in Newcastle United squad. Tino Livramento with 52, which was 6th. Now, this is one of the main statistics I think we're missing. Progressive passes received. What are progressive passes? Is moving your team 25% up the pitch. So if you're receiving a lot of progressive passes, means your starting position is higher. So when I speak about having players in advanced areas and playing the ball forwards, Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall allowed us to do that. And finally, even if we look at tackles last season, Lewis Hall finished top and Tino Livramento finished third. So not only do these two impact us going forwards, but their ability to recover possession, win tackles, win duels is absolutely enormous. Now, if we look at Tino Livramento in isolation, this is incredible for a fullback. Look at the amount of progressive carries he did last season. 66 long progressive carries. Tino Livramento excels at carrying the ball forwards, especially from deep areas into advanced zones. That allows Newcastle United to often bypass the first line of pressure. Once we do that, the opposition are under pressure, so they just open up their shape. It's so different to Kieran Trippier, who relies more on passing and crossing. So when it comes to Kieran Trippier, if he doesn't have a mobile forward, he finds it difficult to really create, whereas Tino Livramento can progress the ball forwards and let Nick Voldemar get in the box. Now, one of the main things I think we're missing in runs in behind. Look at the amount of runs in behind Tino Livramento attempted last season, 688, which is insane. What do I often say in football? Movement kills. Because with Tino Livramento trying to run in behind in the final third, that creates gaps in the opposition's defense. So Tino Livramento is a massive missing piece in our system at the minute. But so is Lewis Hall, because what I like to call Lewis Hall is a silent assassin. Came through the academy as a midfielder, which just highlights his technical ability. He's willing to progress play forwards, and the statistics prove that as well. Even if we look at Lewis Hall's counter pressing and ball recoveries, he ranked highly in the Premier League last season. Newcastle United were an excellent counter pressing team last season. Lewis Hall in the Premier League last season finished 9th for counter pressing recoveries. So once the opposition did win the ball back from us, Lewis Hall immediately won the ball back, which allowed us to transition much more effectively. On top of that, ball recoveries. As you can see, both Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall were in the top 10 last season for ball recoveries. And the importance of having players that can recover the ball is massive, because it means you can play with your defensive line higher, which ultimately impacts you defensively and offensively. And when you've got no pace in your back line apart from Malik Chow, this is why Eddie Howe is setting us up so deeper. And the last thing I want to touch upon is one-on-one defending with both of them, to be honest. But I've only got the graphic from Lewis Hall. But Tino Livramento is an excellent one-on-one defender. Good body shape, he recovers the ball well, he's got that nice change of direction where he can cope with tricky wingers, whereas Dan Burn, Kieran Trippier, Emil Kraft don't have that. And look at the defensive duels won, and he in his own third by Lewis Hall last season. So we didn't need Malik Chow to go and double up or Sven Botman to go and double up, but this season we're starting to see that. We're starting to protect Dan Burn at left back, which is ultimately making Sven Botman move out of his position. So there's a lot of factors into why we're so poor away from home. But the main two factors is our defensive shape, not having dynamic fullbacks. But look, I want to hear your thoughts on this video. Did you enjoy this video? Do you agree with this video, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Hope you have a nice day, and how are the lads?